Hello and welcome to It's About Youth. I'm your host, Farhana. Now, youth today are facing pressing and mounting economic challenges that it is high time for them to take matters into their own hands. And what's a better place to do this than the Youth Economic Forum happening this coming Saturday, hosted by the Perdana Fellows Alumni Association. We have with us today Ewanina, Effandie, Director of the Youth Economic Forum itself, and Syed Mohamed Arif, President of Perdana Fellows Alumni Association, to talk more about all this. Thank you so much for joining us today, you guys.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
Right. Before I want to touch on the Youth Economic Forum itself, I have to talk about the biggest elephant in the room, which is budget, because we just had budget last week. So I want you guys, you know, as youth advocates, as youth activists, to talk a little bit about what you make of the budget, the good and the bad, the overall incentives or measures when it comes to youth. Let's start with you, Syed.
Yeah. Perhaps when you mention about what are the specific incentives, right? I think there's a lot of higher fiscal initiatives that are being brought up by the government, especially on the minimum wage, announcement. And also at the same time, there are many other things that are going to be relatable to the youth, especially when you notice that there's a lot of incentives specifically for example, we call it micro, credentials for, young professionals to really, we call it pivot to another career, perhaps in the digital era. So, I mean, I guess at the same time as well, there are other initiatives that the government needs to look into. For example, in the sense that there might be more individuals that do not want to go into the primary workforce. They want to go into a more gig economy, or even we call it informal sector. So I think that's something that the government is doing well in this current budget, and that is something that we are going to discuss at the forum happening on Saturday.
Yeah. Right. Ewanina, what's your take on the budget?
I think the main one that most youth are excited about is definitely the increase in minimum wage. But I think it's quite. I think it should be different according. I mean, my opinion would be I think it should be different according to different states and things like that. But I think one of the other main one would be on the AI. I think on the AI, on tax incentives on AI upskilling. If they're planning to upskill themselves, there's a bit of incentives there. I think that's quite a good measure to encourage youth to upskill themselves further in whatever existing skills that they have. Yeah.
Right. I want to drill a bit further. Is there any gaps that you think or missed opportunity in the budget that you feel might have benefited youth but were not addressed?
Well, I think currently at this juncture, I think there is a big gap in the sense that how do we actually cover the middle income, people within the economy.
Right.
At the same time, I think there is a revision of the, subsidies in terms of, when they mention about RON 95 and such. So I think there needs to be a real implementation that needs to be thought about on how do you actually implement policies that affect the middle income class. Right. But nevertheless, at the same time, other than the middle income class, there is still lower income class that needs to be addressed, right, which I believe, I think the Rakyat hasn't gotten a very high level number of what the situation really is,
right,
in the sense that how many people are underemployed, for example. How do we address certain concerns that really need to be looked into, because this is a whole lifetime literacy, focus kind of thing that the government needs to look into, because we need to ensure that there is equitable and also means for the government to support on how do they actually go out of the rabbit hole, if they are in a rabbit hole in the first place. So I think that's something that we really need to talk about moving forward, because policies alone doesn't move the needle.
Yes.
There needs to be actionable policies on the ground. They are matching to what the people need in their lives. Yeah.
If I may add on, especially on the RON 95 and the petrol subsidy, I think the one main thing that is a concern, or I would say that it's a concern in terms of that would affect multiple different lives, would be I think public transport. I think even though we given the subsidies and stuff on the RON 95, I believe that it's a big thing for basically youth to purchase a car first thing as they graduate, because they have to opt to choose to live quite far from their office just to afford an affordable house. So I think public transport, like improving public transport, would be the best. We believe that improving public transport would be something that would impact many lives, not just youth itself, but that would save a lot of cost in terms of not just housing, but also transport. And so, because it doesn't make sense for the minute someone graduates, they have to
have a car. Yeah.
When that should not be the first
thought
or first commitment, basically, right after they graduate.
I mean, there was a saying that says that, the mark of a high-income nation is how well the public transport is. Because we all, whenever we go anywhere, we all rave about the public transport whenever we travel, right? Yeah. And I do agree with you with regards to classification. There's this new transition towards, the T20, B40, M40 class. And these people are worrying about where they fall, And if you are proposing this sort of adjustment or transition, there needs to be actionable policies or execution when it comes to all this. Yeah. Right, that wraps up budget. Let's move to the Youth Economic Forum itself. But before that, I want to talk about, since this is the platform that we will be discussing some of the pressing challenges for youth. Let's start with you, Ewanina. What are some of the most pressing economic issues you feel that youth today are facing?
I think what we've mentioned before on the budget itself, I think that is one, especially on the skills. I think that plays a role in a way that youth, they feel that their skills are not being fully utilized or optimized in their workspace. The mismatched skill sets, basically. Second would be the unemployment. I think there's a concerning rate of 10.6% of university students are unemployed. It's a huge concern, I think, because that's one would be mismatch skill sets. Second would be brain drain, basically. It doesn't make sense in a way that we have so many talented youth, but how is it that they're not optimized or utilized fully, which they would bring much more economic development to the country if they are optimized or given the space to give back to the nation, basically.
Right.
Yep. Just to echo to what Ewanina mentioned, right? When you talk about unemployment rates and where are we going, basically, right? There might be a lot of parameters that are the reason why this happens, right? For example, there is a lack of equitable income that I believe many of the youth are going through. To give you a numbers perspective, every year we get around 300 to 400,000 students, SPM leavers, which either will decide whether they want to go through tertiary education, which is go to either A-levels or diploma or university, or either they go through the informal path.
Right.
Informal path of whether they go to gig economy, they go to work at the fast food restaurants, So there is a big pathway in what their life is going to be, and that will affect primarily their livelihoods in a sense. Of course, at the same time, when we talk about equitable income, that would affect the high cost of living as well, in terms of how much do you need to pay for rent. For example, in Kuala Lumpur, it might be 1,000 to 2,000 ringgit. And when you compare that to the national wage, it's not comparable and not logical to me or even to many of the youth. At the same time, when that happens, there will also be a housing crisis where will the youth eventually be able to own, or will it be in a way that it's going to be a rent forever kind of mentality, right? So I think we are at that crossroad of having to ensure that the youth are able to endure through the time of when they are most effective in the workforce, right? So I think that's something that we really need to look into, and those are the concerns that I believe that the government really needs to address, and that's something that we want to talk about.
It's sounding pretty bleak, but,
of course, yeah.
but
Yep.
that's the reality, and that's
reality,
where both of you come in with this Youth Economic Forum happening this Saturday, hosted by Perdana Fellows Alumni Association. Now, this is the place where thought leaders, experts, students, and everyone would gather and talk about these challenges. I want to talk a little bit about the theme before we talk about the pillars here. The second economic takeoff, Malaysia's path to the new economy. Interesting theme. What is required to achieve this second economic takeoff, and how would you imagine this new economy is built, especially where youth is concerned?
Yeah. Maybe Ewa, you want to take it?
Sure.
Or?
The director itself.
I think the theme, a second economic takeoff, how that came about is basically, I think we started off thinking, we had a brainstorm basically. We are at a very crucial or very interesting juncture right now, in a way that there's a rise of data centers and AI and digital technology, and then we have the green side of things, where one side needs a lot of water, energy, electricity resources, and the other needs to make sure that we have renewable energy.
We don't overdo it, yeah.
We don't overdo it. That's one. And the second economic takeoff itself is mainly because I'm sure all of us know that back in the 90s, we had a tremendous economic, I would say, economic reliance, or we were on average about 6.5% yearly on in the industrial side. However, we were almost one of the Asian tigers that time, but we believe that this whole new economy, green economy and digital economy, would be a good, a different angle where Malaysia can leverage a second economic takeoff, hence the name, a second economic takeoff. And a bit more on the theme, we're focusing on 3 pillars: digital economy, green economy, and talent. I think the digital economy and green economy, we're focusing on the green economy, we're focusing a lot more on the new energy transitional roadmap. Yep. And then the digital economy part, we're focusing on the digital economy blueprint. And I think the overall one would be NIMP, the Industrial Master Plan. And the last pillar we're focusing on is on talent. I think one thing that we really want to emphasize here is that, given all of these wonderful roadmaps and plans by the Madani government, how can we leverage all of these investments that are coming in, especially in the data center or cloud services, Google, Oracle, AWS? How do we make the most out of these investments coming in into Malaysia and make the most for our economic development? We believe that the answer lies in youth itself, hence the theme for this year.
Right. I think that pretty much wraps up, what the theme is all about and what will be discussed during the forum itself. We want to talk about the pillars, but right after this break. Hello and welcome back to It's About Youth. Today we are joined by Ewanina, Effandie, Director of Youth Economic Forum, and Syed Arif, President of the Perdana Fellows Alumni Association, to talk about the Youth Economic Forum 2024 happening this Saturday. Now, this is the platform where youth engage in serious discussion about our economic challenges today, and they have decided on 3 key pillars, which is green economy, the digital economy, and also talent development. Now, these are all, based on what Ewanina have mentioned just now, are crucial pillars for the second economic takeoff, or the new economy that we imagine that we would inherit in the future. But let's first talk about one of the pillars, which is green economy. Now, Syed, what are the biggest obstacles you think when it comes to Malaysia achieving its renewable energy targets, and how can these be overcome?
Yeah. If you look at the current ecosystem right now, Malaysia is quite small in terms of being a country, right? Our carbon output is actually not that big, but I think there is a need, and also we call it what's the word? Kesedaran in Malaysians that we really need to shift our focus from being reliant too much on fossil fuels. So I think being a country that has a national oil company, Petronas being the custodian, I think we are very reliant on high fossil fuels. But companies such as Sarawak Energy and also Petronas are moving towards being more sustainable, because we have implemented many measures within the country to ensure that we meet those requirements in terms of meeting ESG standards, meeting sustainability standards. So I think that's something that we aim to have. But there are obstacles, of course. When you look at Malaysia as an ecosystem, we are, in my opinion, still currently a developing country, because we have so many states and cities that we need to connect. So how do we ensure proper development and ensure that the grid is enough to endure that amount of load when we want to move from, we call it combustion fuel, or even combustion way of energy into renewable energy. But also comes to the part where we need to think about the whole ecosystem. When we move from being, being reliant on fossil fuels to being reliant on batteries in the future, for example, in green economy, you need to ensure that the life cycle and ecosystem needs to be managed, so that there is no livelihoods that are going to be affected and such. So I think that's something that we really need to work together among many organizations, agencies, and also companies within Malaysia. So, and in the sense that I think there is a regulatory fight between certain states, in my opinion, that have perhaps certain resources. So that needs to be managed well, because if we look at Malaysia's ecosystem, we have a lot of minerals as well. At the same time, we have underground minerals, and also on the mainland, and also oil in the sea side as well at the same time. So that's something that we need to.
And where does youth, with regards to this ecosystem, where does youth fit into all this?
In that sense, I believe that when we have these new economies emerging, we really need to ensure that the youth are well prepared to ensure that they are able to be in the high-skilled jobs that needs to be filled. Because when Ewanina mentioned on the very the many investments in digital economy and also in the new energy sectors, we also will have a lot of mismatch in terms of the ability of whether an individual can do the work that is needed, right? So I think there's a skills mismatch that we need to really settle. The government needs to ensure that if there is a pivot in human capital development in Malaysia in certain accrued or even specific sectors, we really need to manage that in a well-managed way. If not, I think the unemployment rate will soar higher, with the reason being some people are not as skillful to do what is needed.
So it's prepping the youth with the right knowledge and the right awareness and the right skills to be able to sort of manage the kind of challenges or the kind of problems that we have right now when it comes to establishing a robust green economy. Yes?
Correct.
I'm getting at that? Right.
Correct.
Okay. Ewanina, you said just now it needs to be in tandem. So we are investing in green economy, but at the same time we're having a lot of this investment with big techs, for example. So then comes the digital economy part. So what role do you think data can play in empowering young entrepreneurs and innovators, for example, or the youth in general in Malaysia, and how can youth play a part in Malaysia's digital journey?
Okay. There's a different angle to this whole digital technology that is emerging right now. I think as much as data scientists are popping up, I think there's little to no clue of what is actually going on in the data center. So I think a bit more transparency or a bit more awareness done by the data centers on what consists inside the data center would help the youth to know what exactly they have to upskill themselves basically. And then on the other hand, we have startups, basically. Youth that are venturing to startups. I believe that as much as we have data centers around in Malaysia, they still need people to use those data centers and cloud services. So with youth being aware of, not aware, but much more, they're aware, and also they will implement the cloud services in their startups that would help us to fully utilize the data centers even more. I mean, that's one aspect of it. But if I were to go back to Syed's point and your point, if we take a step back, I think as much as we focus on upskilling a specific sector, I believe that it might not be sustainable as well, because we might, I think back in the days where we said we needed a lot of computer science students, or we need more biotech students, things like that, then we get too many of them, and then they end up being unemployed or unsure, or they might not venture into that specific degree that they studied in. So if we take a step back, I believe that one main skill that I believe that most youth should have is critical thinking skills, in a way that given whatever situation that they are being put in, given however the economic state is, they are agile to the changes.
I mean, I agree when you say we need to take a step back, because I feel like with a lot of this very big announcement, with a lot of this very big investment, we need to be able to look at on the ground what's already available, what needs to be upskilled. For example, who will fit into all these gaps that will eventually be there.
Yep.
So I agree completely with you. I mean, even us here, you know, we talk about big data, we're like, huh, okay, sure.
People don't actually get it.
People don't actually get it. There needs to be more awareness and knowledge on it. Right. So at the crux of all this is talent, essentially. We want talent. We want to upskill talent. We want to make sure that the youths of today are prepped for being the talent, basically. So how can we address this, especially when it comes to brain drain, just now you mentioned, and underemployment? How can we ensure that we have the skilled workforce that we need to ensure that economy, the green economy and digital economy, and the new economy is robust?
Yep. I think coming back to, you have to relate this to what the government is doing at the same time, right? Because we have all of this NIMP, New Industrial Master Plan, also New Energy Transition, New Energy Transition Roadmap, NETR.
Yes.
So those two specific initiatives or even blueprints by the government are actually to ensure that we are able to provide a platform for young people and also for people that wants to get a job, to ensure that the ecosystem is well catered for. In the sense that there must be guidelines within these specific blueprints in terms of what type of jobs that are going to be available for the local talents in Malaysia to be addressing, right? So I think we really need to be wary of this, because we do not want to be, blindsided by foreign expertise. I believe that, with the current workforce that Malaysia has, with the many, we call it tertiary education institutions in Malaysia, we are well equipped. It's just how do we strategize on the part where we need to identify how many engineers are needed, how many people that are specifically interested in data centers are related. So I think that's something that we really need to matchmake, and I think the government has a big role to matchmake that, to ensure that many of the youth don't get to be part in the underemployed sector. So I think that's something that we really need to look into in very detail. Yeah.
And also to add in the equitable income and all that as well all this, right? Correct. Right. Okay, we have, I guess, one or two more questions. Let's look at the Youth Economic Forum itself. It aims to inspire young Malaysians to play their part in nation building, and it's a very great platform to do it. But what are some of the concrete actions that young professionals can actually take to contribute to Malaysia's economic journey or development beyond participating in this forum?
Yeah.
Ewanina?
Yeah. I mean, Ewan, one second.
No,
okay. I mean, your question on how does the youth be part in this process, right? I think most importantly, the youth needs to remember that the conversation needs to go on, and you have to be part to ensure that your voices are well heard by either people in government and also people that are in the private sector that manages certain initiatives. Like, so in that sense, we really need. I mean, the Youth Economic Forum is done to ensure that there is a platform for the youth to speak out. And I think something different this year that we have done, Ewanina, is in terms of really going into where specific policies and ideas that we want to gather together. So we actually did, policy roundtable discussion and also made actually a policy recommendation that we had sent to the Higher Education Minister. We initially sent 10 resolutions that I think the team has drafted. Then after that we reduced after his recommendations and we submitted it to him. So that's something that we want to focus more on policy to ensure that really the youth know what they want for the future to give them that opportunity.
Great. I mean, we only have a few seconds left, so I'm going to give you guys quick 5 seconds PSA about the Youth Economic Forum. Go ahead, Ewanina.
Do I look at the camera?
You can look at that.
Yes.
Oh, there. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay. We have our Youth Economic Forum 2024 this Saturday at MyTech, South Entrance Level 1, Hall 4. See you there. If anything, you can go to our website, YEF2024.com.
And this is a yearly event, by the way.
Yeah, this is a yearly event.
It's our
So
8th one.
if you don't get to come to this one, you'll come to the next one. But just be aware that this is happening, and this is a great platform for engaging discussions with experts, stakeholders, students, you name it. Right. Thank you so much, Ewanina and Syed, for summing up the Youth Economic Forum. And we wish you all the success for this forum. And we hope that this can be one step forward with regards to the youth being a part of nation building and the new economy.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you so much.
for
Thank you so much, Mana.
I am Effandie. This is It's About Youth. Thank you for watching.